We'll give it a few more minutes. I'm still letting people in here. This is going to be bad, but I have to ask, Randolph, if you're on, you must be underneath a different name. So I just need to verify that we have somebody from Explore Minnesota, either Randolph or somebody else. Hmm. This might be a real short forum then. Bear with me here. See if I can get Randolph on. All right, Randall just responded to me. I got to send him the link again, so we'll get him on here in a second. The link he had wasn't working, so I had to resend him the link. So again, just sorry for the wait, but just bear with us.
Hey,
Randolph, can you hear us?
yeah, it's working now.
All right, man. Hey, appreciate it. Sorry that link didn't work.
That's all right.
Yep. Thanks everybody for your patience. It is 11:09. I'm actually going to turn it over to Randolph Briley. He is with Explore Minnesota, the deputy director, and I know he works with the Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership as well. So some of you guys might have met him at the annual meeting back in October. So, but with that, Randolph, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you have it.
All right. I'm gonna try to see if I can find. I'm gonna try to share my screen if I can.
You should be able to.
Okay, let me find it. Here we go. All right. And so you should be able to see this is kind of a presentation that I give on the both on the Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership and on our economic impact report. So first, I want to kind of give you a quick background of who I am, so you know who is who's chatting with you today. So my name is Randolph Briley, and I am the director of the Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership. I am also the deputy director of Explore Minnesota, and my portfolio is outdoor recreation. Um, Previous to this, I was a senior advisor at the DNR for about 5 years. And before that, I worked in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill in the U.S. House doing natural resource and agricultural policy. Um, and before that, I got my master's degree and my JD in natural resource law and policy in Vermont at Vermont Law School. And even before that, I was a snowboard tech and a fishing guide. So I've been pretty much doing natural resources type stuff my entire career. And as you can tell, I don't really have a Minnesota background because I grew up, or accent because I grew up in the Carolinas. Um, but having to be here now, and I've lived in Minnesota now about 7 years, I think. Um, so yeah, that's kind of who I am. And so to give you kind of an overview of what the Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership is, or ORIP for short. Um, so we have one mission. Our singular mission at the partnership is to support the growth of Minnesota's outdoor recreation economy. That's really our guiding star. Um, we do that by supporting the outdoor recreation industry. And so there's two primary components to that economy, and to pretty much every economy. There's consumers and producers, or users and producers. And the users are folks who get out on their bikes or on hiking trails or in the parks every week or multiple times a week. And then the producers are the folks that provide those users with the services and the goods to help ensure that they have a good time when they're in the outdoors, whether it's manufacturing bicycles or backpacks or canoes or kayaks, you name it. So those are the two primary components. Our focus largely at the Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership is on the producer side of that equation. We do work on, we do some projects when it comes to getting more people in the outdoors, but we tend to defer those activities to organizations and agencies that have been doing it for years, like the DNR or like nonprofits in the space, or folks like Theo Worth Park here in town, the Lafayette Foundation. We focus largely on producers because no one's doing that. No one in the state enterprise focuses on outdoor recreation industry, specifically the producers, the entrepreneurs, the job seekers. And so that's kind of that's where we focused our effort, because we have a limited bandwidth, because we have a small budget, small staff. The Outdoor Recreation Industry Partnership, we have 3 strategic pillars that we kind of organize all of our work and all of our projects around. The first of those is the creation of resources. So we help develop resources for the industry to help them grow or just develop. Those kind of resources include things like our annual economic impact report, which we'll go into in a few slides, but also things like one-pagers and toolkits. We just put out a business development toolkit for young entrepreneurs who are looking to start a business in the outdoor recreation industry in Minnesota. So things like that that anyone can use to grow their business. Another strategic pillar is we work really hard to build community in the outdoor industry space by convening stakeholders, and we really try to convene stakeholders across lines of interest or silos. The industry, just like every other industry in the world, is chopped up into different silos, and those silos are chopped up into other silos. So our goal is to knit those all together as much as we can, so that we have one large communal industry that is working together, because that only benefits everyone in the industry. And then finally, our final pillar is we communicate value. We tell the story about the importance of outdoor recreation and the importance of the outdoor industry to Minnesota's economic portfolio. And finally, ORIP is comprised of 4 agencies right now. These are the 4 founding agencies of ORIP, which include the DNR, Explore Minnesota. Obviously, that's where I reside. DEED, which is the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the IRRR, which is the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. Those are the partners that we work together with right now. Let's go to the next slide. The structure of ORIP is, like I mentioned, we're very small. Our budget is $150,000 biannually, so that's about $75,000 a year programmatically. And we have to go back to the legislature every 2 years when there's a budget session to maintain that budget. We're built on the partnership is built on an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between those 4 agencies that I mentioned. And the memorandum of understanding lasts for 5 years with an additional 4 years that we can add on to that MOU before having to create an entirely new one. So 9 years total, and we're in year 2 right now. So still fairly young. Staff-wise, there's 1 FTE full-time employee. That's myself. And I work very closely with 3 liaisons. So each agency that is a partner of ORIP has assigned a liaison from that agency to work directly with me. We connect and collaborate all the time to kind of share resources and knowledge to move these initiatives forward. As I mentioned, meet weekly with the liaisons. We're always on the email. I meet quarterly with the commissioners of the partnership agencies just to ensure that we're kind of meeting their expectations and achieving what we put out to achieve with this effort. And then I share out an annual report with those agencies as well. So I mentioned that we have 3 pillars. Some of our priorities, I wanted to kind of organize some of the projects that we're currently working on into those 3 pillars. And these are the primaries, the primary priorities. These are the things that I spend my day-to-day working on. And I'll go through these fairly quick because there's a lot of them. When it comes to resources, I mentioned the Outdoor Recreation and Economic Impact Report. I also mentioned the Business Development Toolkit. We're also developing a 4-year strategic plan right now. We're in the process of strategic planning for 2027 through 2031, I think. We're also developing a crowdsourced business directory on our website to highlight outdoor recreation industry businesses throughout the state and have kind of a one-stop shop that folks can go to if they're interested in learning more about the businesses that we have in the state that are part of the outdoor industry. The community building. We host an annual industry summit every year. This year's summit is going to be in September 24th in Bloomington at the Highland Hills Chalet. And it's just an opportunity for the industry to convene, to spend the day together, to convene, to share information and to just learn what's going on in this space. There are a few other communal activities that we participate in. We'll be working closely with the team who's bringing Outdoor Retailer to Minnesota next year. And if you don't know, Outdoor Retailer is the world's oldest and largest industry trade show for outdoor recreation in the kind of the silent sports space, I guess. All the outdoor recreation activities that you would find at an REI. So that's hiking, camping, biking, paddling, you name it. Outdoor Retailer has been around for over 30 years. They've always been in either Denver or Salt Lake City. They've decided that they wanted to completely reboot. So in 2026, they're moving to Minnesota, and they're going to bring about 20,000 people with them from across the globe. And that's manufacturers, not like Patagonia and North Face, retailers like REI and Shields and Dick's and stuff, and media outlets like Outside Magazine, Climbing Magazine, Camping Magazine, and influencers. So you're going to have the entire galaxy of outdoor recreation, the outdoor recreation industry here in Minnesota for a week in August, starting next year, and they'll be here until they're tired of being here. So probably they usually stay in one spot about a decade. So we're really happy to welcome Outdoor Retailers. It's been a good opportunity for Minnesota's outdoor industry. We also are a part of the Confluence of States. The Confluence of States is a bipartisan kind of a working group of states. I think there's about 21 members now, everywhere from Vermont to Arkansas. And it's basically just an opportunity for states to share best practices when it comes to supporting their industry in the state. And so we meet monthly, and like I said, we kind of share what's going on and best practices and learn from each other. And then finally, we've been working with developing Minnesota State Outdoor Business Alliance, and they're growing. They're growing their membership right now. And it's largely an industry coalition of businesses that are focused on the outdoor industry. A few of the priorities that we have when it comes to communicating value and telling the story includes regional outreach. I go to different regions every month to meet with folks and to present presentations and whatnot. So that's part of it. We have a podcast that comes out every other week called Explore Minnesota More that really kind of dives into the outdoor recreation ecosystem in Minnesota. And we also do your standard earned media, op-eds and that kind of stuff. So those are some of the priorities. That's kind of our day to day, really. But I get asked a lot about why we focus so much on economic impact of the outdoor industry. Why does it matter that we focus on that? Because there's a lot more to the value of outdoor recreation than just the economic impact. We all know that being outdoors improves our health and our well-being. It increases educational outcomes for kids and adults and a number of other things. But we focus a lot of our attention on the economic impact. It's because we want to tell the story that outdoor recreation is more than just fun, that it actually fuels our economy. It's not just an amenity. It's not a nice to have. It's critical infrastructure. Our economy would not be nearly as strong as it is without outdoor recreation. We're one of the top industries in the state. So we want to tell that story, and this data helps us show leaders, businesses, communities exactly how big of a role outdoor recreation plays, because people don't really understand where it fits in the mix with other industries. And measuring this economic impact helps communities make smarter investments in parks and trails, and helps attract businesses that can support Minnesotans who want to spend time outdoors. And so I kind of look at it as the outdoor recreation industry, or outdoor recreation having kind of a virtuous cycle where participation is always the North Star. That's the foundation of the entire industry itself. It's just people getting outside. Participation will always be that important thing. But increased participation, it leads to increased production, and that's where we kind of come in. And production means more businesses, more jobs, you name it. Participation and production together increase influence, and that influence can lead to increased investment. That investment leads to more infrastructure, or better infrastructure, or upkept infrastructure, which ultimately leads to more participation. So it all loops together, and the economic data that we share serves as kind of an oil that keeps that cycle running, really. So really to dive into probably our premier resource that we provide at the partnership is our Outdoor Industry Economic Impact Report. So this was released, our first version of this was released in June of this year. We released it at the first annual Outdoor Industry Summit. And we were really excited about it because it's a comprehensive report. It's based, the report itself, the numbers in the report are largely based on the numbers that we get every year from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. So the Bureau of Economic Analysis, they have what is called an outdoor recreation satellite account that was created probably around 2018, 2017, via statute. It was passed and created. And it's their job to pretty much identify what the annual GDP, jobs, et cetera, tax revenue are for the industry, both at the national level and the state level. It's a really good report. It's the gold standard. It's considered the gold standard because it comes from the Fed. So it's not. You see a lot of economic impact reports that come from advocacy orgs and those tend to be based on kind of in-plan modeling, which can, you can, they say every answer has a methodology. So you can basically tell the story you want to tell. But with with these numbers from the feds, these are numbers that there's a lot of trust that they are impartial. So it creates that trust around them, which is why they are considered kind of the gold standard. And but even though we use that report, it has two big shortcomings that we wanted to two gaps that we wanted to fill really. First being gross output. So gross output versus GDP. Gross output those are two important metrics. Gross output tends to be a much bigger number than GDP because gross output takes into account all the intermediate sales that go into developing a product like a bicycle or a backpack, whereas GDP only takes into account the final sale. And so the BEA does gross output for the nation, which is over $1 trillion for the industry, which is bigger than pharmaceuticals, it's bigger than the automotive industry, it's bigger than oil and gas. But they don't do it for the state. They don't do gross output for the state for whatever reason. They say it's due to staffing issues, and resources, which makes sense. So we really wanted to have a gross output number for the state. We wanted to know what that number was, and so that's one of the improvements we attempted to make with this report. The second improvement is the numbers for the report, the BEA report. They only look at the state as a whole, and so they stop at the state boundaries really. And we wanted to dive deeper into the state. We wanted data for the regions and for the counties, because that would help us tell a more nuanced story about the importance of outdoor recreation throughout the state. And so those are the two main improvements we really wanted to make with this report. And the goal of this report is to update it every January based upon those numbers that we get from the BEA in November every year. Unfortunately, I got a question mark there will be updated every January. The question mark is because this year is unique. As you know, the government was shut down in November. And so there's been a significant backup on federal economic products rolling out to the public. And so what usually comes out in November still has not come out. We're still waiting for the BEA numbers. We are hopeful that those numbers will come out in early January, at which point we will update our report. But right now we're still waiting on those economic numbers. So next slide. The scope of the report. So the scope of the report, as I mentioned, is the first ever statewide report on outdoor recreation's economic footprint. And that's the entire industry, all the silos from the hook and bullets to the motorized to the silent sports, and all the silos in between. And so what it does is, as I mentioned, it's based upon the national data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, but it also includes Minnesota-specific research that we get from places like our partners at DEED. They have a lot of job data at DEED. And ultimately, it provides insights at not just the state and the national level, but also the county and the regional levels, which is something we really want to do. Before we gotta get into what the actual numbers are, just a bit about how these numbers are defined, I guess, by the BEA and by us using the BEA's numbers. The first thing they had to do at the BEA was to define what is outdoor recreation. And this is probably the most controversial topic because a lot of folks have a very broad definition. A lot of folks have a very narrow definition. They had to compromise because this is in statute, and it had to go through the regulatory process to define and administer. So ultimately, they came up with a fairly broad definition of what is outdoor recreation. It's highlighted here on the slide. It's all recreational activities undertaken for pleasure that occur outdoors. And so that's everything from pickleball to gardening to ice climbing to paragliding, you name it, to reading a book in a hammock in a park. But that it's broken down further. Those the definition is broken into kind of two types, two buckets, I guess. One is considered core outdoor recreation, which is your goods and services, like the gear, the equipment, the boats, fishing rods, helmets, backpacks, concessions, maintenance, repair, fees, you name it. And then supporting outdoor recreation, which is kind of the travel and hospitality stuff, the local trip spending, construction on buildings and infrastructure, and then government expenditures for that, for maintenance and whatnot, and staffing. So those are kind of the definitions of the BA and how it's and how they kind of define what outdoor recreation is and the industry is. So they've got what's included, but what's not included in that definition. So BA statistics do not capture the underlying value of imported products sold in the United States. So it doesn't really look, it really only looks at the products that are manufactured here and sold here or sold overseas, but not at the products that are imported here and then sold. So if you get a bike from Germany and you sell it at Angry Catfish, it doesn't take into account that sale. So that's one thing that's left out of the mix of the economic metrics. Another thing that's left out are obviously the non-recreational uses of various products. So like boats and backpacks, just taking those as an example. Boats and backpacks are both used for recreation, but they also have non-recreational uses. Backpacks are used in the educational context. Boats are used in the transportation context. So BEA really has to kind of define what portion of that industry is recreational and non-recreational. So the non-recreational uses are all left out of the mix. And so who are workers? Who are considered workers when it comes to the numbers that we have or that the BEA has? Again, these aren't our definitions. This is the federal government that defines these, and we use their numbers. Workers are full-time employees, part-time employees. That's a picture of someone working up at Frost River, I think, up in Duluth, doing one of their packs. Temporary workers, seasonal and short-term employees on paid vacation or paid leave, but it does not include, and this is a huge caveat, and something that a lot of folks are working to change, but it currently does not include sole proprietors or those who are self-employed in outdoor rec, which is a humongous proportion of folks that work in the industry, which is why we're all trying to work with the federal government so that they do include those. But right now it doesn't include sole proprietors and self-employed. So, which is unfortunate. The methodology that is used by the BEA. So this is a highly simplified version. If you really want to get into the details, I can connect you with the folks that work at the BEA to walk you through it. But to oversimplify it, like I said, they define what is outdoor recreation. And then using that definition, they identify all the outdoor related industries in America using the NAICS codes and economic data, which is a large swath of industries in manufacturing and whatnot. And then once they have that big bucket of industries, all their NAICS codes, They use national surveys to identify what percentage of each industry is actually outdoor recreation related. As I mentioned, they don't include non-recreation uses. So what they'll have to do is they'll have to use a national survey to tell what percentage of boats are used for recreation and what percentage of boats are not used for recreation. And then they only consider that portion that is used for recreation. So once they have that percentage, once they have all those NAICS codes and those percentages, they apply the data from the states, the jobs and the businesses in the states, which are also NAICS coded, to ultimately arrive at the numbers that we get every year from the BEA. So to go into a quick overview of what the key statewide findings are for this year, like I mentioned, we're still waiting on this year's numbers. And this is where it gets complicated because it is the numbers we get in 2025 are 2024 numbers. So the numbers we got in 2024, 2023 numbers, and that's what these are. So these are 2023 numbers. So we're actually waiting for 2024 numbers, even though it's 2025. But these are numbers from 2024 or 2023. But these are the latest ones we have. So 13.5 billion GDP. That's, as I mentioned, that's the final sell. That doesn't include the intermediate sales that go into developing a product. But also includes wages paid to workers and the profits for business, tax collected, and whatnot. The total economic output, the gross output, which I mentioned is a much bigger number because it includes the intermediate sales, is 23.5 billion for the state, and then it includes 96,000 jobs, and as I mentioned, the actual job number is much higher than that, but they don't include sole proprietors and whatnot, and that. For those jobs, the 96,000 jobs, that's about 3% of all employment in Minnesota. If you look at outdoor recreation as an industry, it sometimes it definitely rivals, but sometimes outperforms traditional natural resource related industries like forestry, mining, agriculture. So it's really helpful to have these numbers and to have them from the BEA so that we can compare. So we can compare the outdoor industry's GDP to the ag industry's GDP to the banking and finance sector's GDP to whatnot. So it's really helpful to have these numbers. To look at it from a regional standpoint, where do we stand when it comes to these numbers in the upper Midwest? We're doing pretty good. Minnesota tops the upper Midwest when it comes to percent of GDP from outdoor recreation for the state, which we try to consistently keep that number above our closest competitors in Wisconsin and somehow in South Dakota. They've got a lot of pheasant hunters there, I guess. So we're in a good place in the upper Midwest when it comes to percent of GDP. We top out everyone. We have, like I said, we have about 96,000 jobs, give or take. That's less jobs than Wisconsin and less jobs than Michigan, which I always say my caveat for that is we have less jobs because we have less people, basically. Wisconsin has a couple thousand more people than Minnesota as a state, and Michigan has about 2 times the size population Minnesota. So that's kind of why you see those numbers like that when it comes to jobs. So we're still, when it comes to upper Midwest, we're in a good place as an industry and leading the upper Midwest as an industry. So our goal was really to turn to and this is the biggest change we made with our report, is to turn national data into local county level insights, because the BEA does not publish county level data. So we had to work with our vendor, who's RRC Associates out of Bozeman, Montana. We had to work with them to develop a custom method and model for them to take the BEA numbers and then break them down to the county level, which again to oversimplify, we matched the outdoor recreation industries with the NAICS codes that the BEA already had. We used employment and business data from both census and in-plan modeling. We allocated state totals, GDP jobs output proportionally to each county. And then we checked the results to make sure that they match the state totals, the BEA state totals for accuracy. And then if you flip through the report, the results are shown using maps and tables by region. I think we broke it down into 5 regions because those line up with Explore Minnesota's regions. There's nothing really scientific to it. But we broke it down into things like GDP share, jobs, and location quotients. So this gives you an example of some of what the data looks like at the county level. But first, a few takeaways from what we learned at the county level, looking at the county level impacts. The most obvious being that every single Minnesota county benefits from outdoor recreation in some way, shape, or form, whether it's jobs or GDP or both. Some counties usually gateway communities to large natural resources like Cook, like Lake of the Woods, Pine County. They rely on outdoor recreation for more than 7% of their local GDP, which is highest in the state. And then the metro counties, Hennepin, Ramsey, Dakota, because that's where a large concentration of the population resides, they lead when it comes to total jobs and spending on outdoor recreation. So this is just an example of the southern region, all the way from border to border. This is a large region. I think in the future we may break it down and break it in half. But this will show you, kind of gives you a visual indicator of where each region or each county stands when it comes to percent of GDP or proportion of GDP of their overall economy. So counties that have higher than 3% GDP are darker. Counties with lower than the lower GDPs are lighter. And just a reminder that the median is around 2.81, and that's where the state is as a whole. So this kind of gives you a visual look at where we are, and it's got this for every region within the economic impact report. And also includes tables for each county that go into the jobs supported by outdoor rec. So Randolph County has 123. The outdoor recreation value added, which is 12 million in Randolph. The outdoor recreation economic output, which again is the gross output number, which is 24 million. Proportion of all jobs supported by outdoor recreation in that county. So for Randolph, is 1.4%. Location quotient, which is so this is kind of a way to compare the county, how it compares to the rest of the state. So if you have a location quotient of 1, then your numbers are aligned with the state numbers. If you have a location quotient below 1, then your jobs and GDP are lower than the state average. If you have a location quotient above 1, like Winona down there at 1.26, then your jobs, GDP, economic numbers are higher than the state average. So it's just a simple way to see where each county stands and compared to the state average. And then a proportion of GDP from outdoor rec. So again, Renville is 1.14%. So these tables are for every county. In the report, we have these tables like this for every county in the state. A few final takeaways before I close this overview. One of the big takeaways is basically public lands really drive the outdoor recreation economy. Just a few examples from some of the data we have in the report. State parks take in $688 million annually. Every person that visits a state trail spends $26 per visit. National forests provide 57 million in GDP and over 1,000 jobs. National parks, 70 million GDP and 900 jobs. But public lands really help small businesses thrive in these gateway communities that they're tied to. They help increase rural resilience. by attracting visitors year-round and diversifying economies. They have a myriad community benefits, from boosting quality of life to attracting new residents, and then it improves long-term growth for counties by investing in trails, campgrounds, water access. It just brings in sustainable returns year over year. So how do we leverage all this data? What do we use it for? Again, we go back to our why. Why is economic impact important? We use this data to attract investment in recreation infrastructure. Having this data was really vital to, for example, attracting outdoor retailer to the state, and to help. We do a lot of work when it comes to business attraction and livability, and so it's really important to have this data when we're trying to attract businesses to the state, because their businesses are really interested in quality of life for their employees. So we want to be able to show them that. We want to show our policymakers, our decision makers, that outdoor recreation, again, is not just fun. It's essential. It's critical. It's not an amenity. It's critical infrastructure. And we can use this data to support small businesses and entrepreneurs that are tied to recreation and recreation processes. So I think that's the last slide on here. Yeah, it is. So I can stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to answer any kind of questions that might have come up from that. A bunch of talking at you. So, if there are any. If not, I guess I did a good job.
Floor's open for anybody.
Well, there's some. Let's see some in the chat. Oh.
Yeah. So that was somebody just asking if we could get a copy of the presentation. Yeah. So Randolph, if you don't mind sending that either to myself or Mary Jo, we can get that posted online for everybody to kind of have access, if you don't mind, to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I can send that to you.
Yep. Perfect. Sure. And then this will be eventually posted on our website as well through Greater Minnesota, the actual forum. So we'll have, this is recording, and so that'll be live as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you're interested in kind of diving deeper into the report, let me put it in the chat, our website. So if you go to our website, outdoorindustrypartnership.com, it's got all these resources. It's got the report and all the things that we provide, the business development toolkit and the one pagers and all that kind of stuff, the podcast episodes and whatnot. So yeah. And our next step is to update this. You will be the first to know once we update it. Once we get the BEA numbers, hopefully, knock on wood, in January. So. Cool.
Any questions?
I guess not.
Hearing none. Well, thanks again, Randolph, for doing this and presenting. I know it's a lot of great information. A lot of people are going to be looking at it. So we appreciate the work you guys are doing. And if there's anything we can ever do as far as Greater Minnesota goes, make sure to let us know. We'd love to help out where we can.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm sure we'll be in touch in the coming months. So have a good holiday if we don't talk.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. See you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.